Samsung A17 is finally here. Over here I have 4GB black version, and on this bad boy we also get a new super slim design as well. Inside the box we get our phone in a very nice paper packaging, our SIM ejector tool, also a bunch of manuals over here, and also our charger cable. Unfortunately, we actually do not get the power adapter, which is a bit ridiculous. And here is brand new European ratings chart, where you can see the actual real life battery when tested by European standards, and also how long this battery inside this phone will actually last in cycles, and also our waterproof rating and repairability index as well. On this phone we also get very nice matte finish on the back, and also the camera bar is completely new as well, and also it's much slimmer than on the past A16 as well. And also the phone itself is incredibly slim indeed. Yeah, the black version indeed looks very nice. However, I find the black version actually attracts quite a lot of fingerprints. On the side, as you see, we have our island for the buttons. I feel it's maybe like tiny bit smaller actually than on the A16, but I do not have side by side to compare with. Also, the button quality actually feels very nice on this as well. On the top we have our microphone over here. On the bottom we have our Type-C, one more microphone, and also our speaker. Unfortunately, we actually do not get headphone jack, which is absolutely ridiculous. On this side over here we have our SIM card tray. And we have a space for 2 SIM cards and also memory card, which is absolutely awesome. On this phone we also get absolutely huge 6.7-inch Super AMOLED display, and the colors look absolutely amazing. And probably the best part is this is actually 90 Hz display, so the fluidity of it looks and feels absolutely amazing. So see just how insanely smooth this phone actually is, and when you are simply browsing something or maybe some websites, it feels extremely premium actually. And on this phone, not only that, but also we get the brand new One UI 7 here as well. So, and also the software experience also is top class on this phone and looks absolutely amazing. So you see just how nice the display actually looks like on this phone. Also, just for fun, let's quickly compare the display of the A17 versus literally 4 times more expensive Samsung S25 flagship. So when you put them side by side, apart from the bezel difference, can you actually tell much difference between them? So I currently have both on auto brightness. So you see just how insanely nice the display is on the A17. I have the A17 on the bottom and S25 on the top. So again, literally 4 times price difference between these phones. But when it comes to the actual real-life results, as you see, incredibly similar. So the brightness definitely on S25 is better, but when it comes to everyday usage, as you see, the A17 looks absolutely amazing. Also, if we compare the speaker of the A17 versus previous Galaxy A16, then actually I find the speaker also more loud and also clarity also slightly better. So also when it comes to speaker, also it appears it has been improved, and in fact probably out of all cheap phones, I think this Samsung A17 easily has the best sound quality out there. When it comes to performance, I feel that the A17 feels very similar to the past A16. In fact, if we check the specs, you see they are pretty much the same. However, what's actually interesting, if you actually do a Geekbench test on this phone, so this is what I'm actually getting on this phone. So previously last year I had the Samsung A16, however with 8GB of RAM, so the more powerful version basically that you could get, and this is the score basically I had on the 8GB version. So as you see at the first look it's the same, but again, so this is only 4GB RAM version over here, So if I can get it focus, so yep, only 4GB version, and it pretty much performs the same essentially as the last A16, but with 8GB version, so the more powerful version essentially. And even though this is only the 4GB RAM version, over here you see for basic tasks when you're actually using the phone, it actually still feels very fast and snappy. Let's open some website. So also website browsing, you see actually very decent. So are you seeing any problems here? Yeah, actually looks very impressive. Of course this 90Hz display also helps us, but yeah, the experience, if you are simply like casual user, if you do not want to play like extremely heavy games, I think this will be actually very decent for you. Let's open all the apps so you see actually how many I have in the background. So again, only with this 4GB version, it's actually fairly efficient here. Also, let's quickly compare performance difference of the A17 versus way more expensive A56. Over here I have the A56 with 8GB of RAM, so again way more expensive and also way more powerful phone, but we're going to see what the actual real life difference is. And I have all the background apps closed on both, so maybe let's start with a simple game first. Okay. Definitely A56, but as you see, is that a huge difference? So I do not think that's a huge difference. Again, if you were to get the A17 with maybe like 6 or 8GB of RAM, this also would be faster. So again, this is only the 4GB version, and this also is more powerful CPU with 8GB. So yeah, not a fair comparison, but also like basic stuff. So you see, okay. So as you see, obviously the A56 is slightly faster if you compare them side by side, but once basically all these apps are loaded, so let's see again. So you see I have basically them in the background running here. Let's open again. As you see, no, there isn't actually much difference. Okay, maybe still tiny bit, but for example, so you see, yeah, actually very decent performance. And this was the A17, looks like side by side with A56. I see definitely the design on this phone also looks incredibly nice for its price. And if you check basically how thick both phones are, also you see the A17 actually even appears slightly thinner basically than the A56. So yeah, much cheaper phone, but also like the build quality also is absolutely awesome on this thing. However, personally, if I had to purchase again, I'd probably maybe get the A17 in maybe like a light color as A56, as basically I find that the back of the phone actually attracts quite a lot of fingerprints and it gets a bit dirty very fast. But still, when it comes to the looks and overall build quality, yeah, I think this phone looks absolutely amazing as well. And also the build quality, yeah, also appears actually top notch on it. And when it comes to the price of the A17, so the base model with 4GB of RAM retails for 239 euros. However, personally I actually paid for mine 205, so on the launch date essentially. So simply shop around if you want to find the best deals on these, since the price usually on these phones drop quite fast. At 239 euros for the 4GB version, I think this phone is actually a bit overpriced. Personally, I would maybe wait a month till it drops to maybe like 170 or 180, and then for that price, I think this would be absolutely fantastic phone. Also, actually, for gaming, I also find this phone absolutely great, because not only we get absolutely awesome screen on this thing, but also I find when it comes to thermal management, also this phone actually absolutely superb. So in fact, if you actually play basically quite extensive games on this one for quite a long time, so you see currently indoors I have like 24 degrees, so you see maybe it jumps to maybe like 30 degrees maximum. So you see also the thermal efficiency also on this phone is absolutely great. And overall, when it comes to gaming performance, definitely I think the A17 for most mid-range games will be plenty enough really. So I do not think most people will actually complain about this, especially considering we actually get this insanely nice display, so which looks absolutely awesome. So yeah, playing games on this thing, yeah, I think it's absolute joy. And when it comes to cameras, A17 also has been actually a bit improved this year. Probably the biggest change is we actually get optical image stabilization on the main lens. So yeah, basically on the previous A16 we actually didn't have optical image stabilization, and your footage and videos essentially were a bit shaky. But again, so we finally get it on this phone. When it comes to the specs, you can simply pause for yourself and see. But again, when it comes to the specs, they are pretty much the same as on the A16. Also, I feel that the processing also actually is slightly improved over the A16. So generally, if you actually have fairly decent light, I think the camera performance is actually fairly decent on this phone. Also, the autofocus is very good as well, and when you are taking pictures, they're also very well exposed. So on this, yeah, basically on the main camera we actually get 50 megapixels. So but when you open it, you actually have to switch it over here to 50 megapixels. And essentially, when you actually take a photo in this 50 megapixel mode, the details are actually like very good. So you see basically, okay, so you see we can actually punch in very well. So again, the camera actually has ability to capture very detailed photos. Also, this phone even gets a Pro mode as well, where you can adjust all the settings, exposure settings, and take actually very decent photos indeed. When it comes to the video, so if we check resolution, the phone says we can record only Full HD, but actually Samsung is very cheeky with this phone, because the CPU in this phone actually is capable enough to record 4K videos. So only this default app, Samsung for some reason is simply like limiting, maybe to get us to purchase more expensive phones. But actually there is a very simple workaround. So we can simply use like any third-party software that allows us to change resolution. For example, maybe open camera. So if you go in the settings here, so video settings, as you see, I can literally switch to 4K, and I'm actually able to record 4K videos basically on this camera, which also is very, yeah, absolutely great. But again, so I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Samsung is simply limiting this feature for no reason whatsoever. But the video quality, however, I would say is absolutely, yeah, great for its price, I would say. So let me simply show you some videos I have recorded with it. And let's test out the video stabilization. So I'm going to run a bit. As you see, the dynamic range exposure also is actually fairly decent here. And let's try to run for a bit more. And also let's check out for fine details. And now I'm recording this video on the A17. You can also hear what the audio would sound like on these microphones. Previously I was recording on my Google Pixel phone. Let's check for focus also. Also you see the focus also is actually fairly fast on this A17. Again, let's check for fine details. So yeah, if you also want to make videos like this with your A17, this is what it would look like. So I think actually fairly decent. And definitely if you have actually a very decent light, I think the footage from the A17 actually looks fairly decent, so can't complain much, especially at this price. Of course, when it comes to low light performance, the S25 and A56, when it actually gets darker, would completely destroy the A17. But if you actually have like decent light, I think the performance actually on the A17 is actually fairly decent. As you saw, the camera performance on the A17 definitely is actually very impressive considering the price of it. And those videos were recorded using the default app in Full HD. If you were to get the third-party apps and record in 4K, obviously you will even get better video quality than I showed you. And in fact, if you compare the A17 versus other budget phones, Then out of all budget phones, if you maybe compare these to maybe some Xiaomi phones, then definitely I think this has the best camera when it comes to all cheap phones. By the way, I forgot to mention on the A17 this year we also get Gorilla Glass Victus protection for the display. At this price, that's absolutely insane. So essentially what that means is you are going to get significantly better scratch resistance and also drop resistance compared to the A16. And finally, also let's talk about the battery life on this bad boy. If you compare to the A16, then we actually get pretty much same battery inside here. So we get 5000 mAh and 25 watts of charging speed, so same spec as on the A16. But actually, so yep, basically this A17 is actually even like slimmer. So as you see just how insanely slim this device is, so they have actually managed to shrink down this phone yet still keep the same amount of like battery capacity inside. And when it comes to the battery, in fact out of all phones, usually these Samsung budget phones actually get the best battery life. So I think you can also get like on this A17 actually better battery life than on maybe like Samsung S25. So these last absolute ages. And also after using this phone for some while, again also it appears when it comes to battery life it's also top notch, so you can get easily like multiple days of actual usage on this phone. And also what helps also is extremely decent like thermal efficiency. So basically when you actually use this phone it doesn't overheat, and also that doesn't waste any energy as well. So yeah, when it comes to the battery performance, I think also this is probably one of the best phones you can get. When it comes to charging speed, however, definitely on some other brand smartphones at this price, you can definitely get even like better charging speeds than this one. So I wish they actually bumped that up to match the competition. But still, when it comes to the overall battery life, yeah, this really has to be one of the best phones out there. And overall, is the new A17 actually worth it? And should you maybe get this phone? Well, I guess it all depends on what kind of phone you already have and how much you can get this phone for. If you are coming already maybe from A16, then I do not see much point actually upgrading to this phone, even though the new design is absolutely awesome on this phone. The specs and performance would be actually very similar. However, if you are coming maybe from like something like A15 or A14 or even older ones, then definitely there is actually like notable upgrade, especially in the cameras. So the processing algorithm again is like miles better than, for example, on A14 or A15. Also stabilization, also like performance also is actually very decent if you compare to like older phones. And overall, when it comes to all cheap phones, I think this really has to be the best out there when you consider all things together. It's absolutely amazing build quality on this phone, also absolutely great battery life, very decent cameras, also very snappy performance, and the software also is absolutely great. So we get the new One UI 7, which in my opinion looks absolutely amazing. So also we are going to get, I think, like 6 or 7 years of software support on this phone, so it will actually last quite a long time actually for you as well. Also, if you are able to pay a bit more for this phone, I suggest you to actually get the 6GB version, and in my opinion I would also wait maybe like a month till actually the price drops on this phone. At the moment, the 240 euros for this 4GB version, I think it's a bit overpriced. So yeah, basically I can bet you that in maybe like a month's time this will drop to maybe like 170, 180, and then for that price, yeah, I think this phone is absolutely amazing. Good luck.